Hello everyone, I am Stéphanie, an artist living in Vannes, France. In today's video I will be sharing the process of my latest sculpture, Contradiction. It was a very messy and struggling progress, which I hope will give you some insight in doing art in general, but also give you some reassurance that most artists actually have no clue why they start something, but keep working on it and pushing themselves until they are satisfied. At least that's the case for me. I cannot speak for all artists, but some of my friends at least work that way as well. So this sculpture isn't quite weighable yet, as I still need to go through a few layers of varnishes and create a sturdy packaging box for it, but if you are interested you can subscribe to my newsletter. I send out emails whenever new artworks are finished and weighable. You can also subscribe if you just want to see my finished artworks. Originally, I thought about keeping this one for my solo show, which is going to be all about books, but that said show is in late 2022, so yeah, I guess I still have some time to start gathering artworks for that one. Also, I haven't updated my online shop in months, and honestly, I feel a bit bad about it. So I wanted to have a few new artworks to put in just before the end of this year. Now, this specific sculpture started a few months ago, in July. Such a long time ago. And yeah, it is to date the longest time I've been sitting on a sculpture. Not an artwork per se, but a sculpture for sure. I'm sure there will be other artworks in the future which will need months of maturation. But frankly, I'm not looking forward to those. It took me so long, not only because of the process itself. Of course, it did take some time just to make it. Sculpting is always a very long process. But mostly because I have felt so unsure about so many details. So it wasn't as much the making of it that was long. It was really the thinking and deciding of the sculpture. It all started with a late night doodle after a long and boring, tedious day. I don't remember that day much, I just remembered it kind of sucked and I needed to unwind in the evening. And so I decided to do something a little creative and, just to bring my mood back up. And so ended up drawing roots on a book, and that started as a tree and ended with an open-winged swan-like bird whose head was a flower. Yeah, I don't know myself what rode me at that time, but once the doodle was done, I felt better and could sleep nicely. Now the next day I looked at this doodle and thought, why not make this into a sculpture? I kind of want to. And here I am a few months later, and that very, very weird vision is finally done. Now, what is this all about? Now, if you followed my work for a while, I trust my subconscious a lot, and often I start artworks without having a clear idea why I start them, and just kind of feeling that I need to work on them. So this was really no different. And the more I worked onto this one, the more it became obvious that the whole sculpture really was about contradiction. We've got a very rooted tree-like being that is trying to fly away. It just doesn't work. Doesn't, right? I mean, either a tree is rooted or a bird is flying, but both at once, it doesn't work. And in a way, it is a very good metaphor of the contradiction we face every day. Now, humans tend to have a very conquering trait. They always want more, to conquer the world, see more, travel more, own more. There's always the wish for something more, and we are rarely satisfied. And while this is also why we're kind of doomed as a species, and we are going to most likely destruct ourselves at least a few more times, at the same time it's also the beauty of our species because we invent and we create new things all the time. But at the same time, humans need a certain stability and they need roots to thrive. If someone is completely unrooted, then they have too much uncertainty in their life and they cannot think and fly, so to speak. And it is certainly true for me. I have created for myself a very stable life that I sometimes find boring, to be honest. But at the same time, it is that stability, as much emotional, physical, and financial, that enables me to fly creatively and physically to other parts of the world, albeit just for a few weeks or months. Well, I mean, obviously not now, of course, with the COVID, and maybe not for a long time, but I mean, that's another topic. So while working on the sculpture, it felt more and more autobiographical, although I suppose all artwork is partially autobiographical because it's the very personal vision of one artist. Again, just a perfect example of trusting your subconscious, even though you don't always understand it at first. Now, artistically speaking, I was really very interested in making the wings out of paper. I did use a paper that is called Modelspan, which is very thin and very sturdy, that I found in London. And I used it in the past on my panda sculpture for the bamboo leaves, and since those leaves I wanted to try to use the same paper but for wings. So I was certainly very eager for that, and while the work on the wings has been numbing, to say the least, because making one leaf hand cut and hand painted one by one before assembling them all together again one by one, it's been tiring and difficult work, but the result is convincing and quite aerial, that actually look like wings, which I'm very pleased about. Now, I had some visual struggle with the color scheme of the whole sculpture. Now, I originally envisioned a mostly white work with golden specks on the wings and possibly gold on the growth, and yeah, that was about it, white and gold. But I tend to stray away from monochrome in the end, and so I wanted to add some color. And I did try a few color combinations in watercolor, but I didn't quite manage to know what I wanted in 2D, so I decided to just go with the flow and try it on the sculpture directly. I knew I could always repaint the whole thing, which, well, I ended up doing like 3 times. So yeah, I started with something natural looking, so to speak, so just the moss was green, the book was still white, and everything was pretty tame, pretty expected, and it just didn't quite work for me. It was almost kitschy for my taste. I often have that issue where I create things that are borderline too whimsical or too magical, that could fall into the land of kids' fairy tale, and I struggle to make them more adult, artistic, so to speak. So I thought, oh well, maybe it needs to be something more fiery, like orange. So I decided to go over all the green and transform it in orange. Basically, I went with an almost complementary color just to see if that would work. Sometimes I start with one color, but the exact opposite works best. But yeah, that was horrid on the white book, so yeah, the book got turned black. Now, orange on black is a good color combination if you are going for hell or Halloween. But that was not really what I was looking for in my sculpture. So at that point, I was getting slightly annoyed at myself, at the sculpture and at the world, and then decided to pick purple, which seemed to be a current saver of mine, as I know that would work with black and gold, and this is how I unlocked that search for the right colors. Now from then on, it was a matter of rebalancing everything out until the sculpture would work. It's always a bit difficult to explain, but the idea is to add or remove things until the whole thing looks coherent and balanced. I started by adding growth and beetles. It was so flat that I needed to add higher growing things. And then it's just a matter of sculpting the growth, painting it, adding it onto the book, assessing if it's enough, and do everything again until it looks just right. I also added 1 or 2 roots to just hone the overall dynamic of the sculpture when it's seen from the side. And I even went as far as butchering the front and neck just because it didn't sit right with me. I'm so glad I did. Going in with the scalpel and reworking certain areas seems bold, but really it is about saving the sculpture until you look at it and you're satisfied. I can only encourage artists to do that. Sometimes you spend an hour or a few hours or even days on a leg, a neck, a snout, but it looks off. When that happens, going back to references and your sketching book can help figure out how to salvage it. And then you just do that. You salvage your artwork. So yeah, this is it for Contradiction. As I said, it still needs some varnishing and probably a few painting retouches here and there that I missed, but it is done and I'm satisfied with the result. For now at least. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, share and consider subscribing, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!